Hello everybody, it's astro-photo here, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I went from this singular image to this image right here. And this was done in only an hour and 30 minutes. So first thing you're going to need to do is you are going to need to learn how to extract very precious details from an image where there's only an hour and 30 minutes of data. So if we take a closer look at the image here, the first thing you'll need to learn to make the details pop out is using Starnet++, which if we take a look here, let me just pull it up really quick. So this is the starless version of the image, and you can see that because I auto-stretched it. It's a little bright. Our star tracker wasn't exactly on the pole. So we do have a little bit of walking noise here, but the good thing is the overall dark lanes are here. You can see some trailing dust. It's very faint, but if you extract it, you probably can see it. We got some arcing dust here. These bands, they're mostly from the gradient removal, but most of them are actually just dust in the background. This is from the banding of no flats, because this has no calibration frames, by the way. So this was an extreme challenge for me because I live in a Bortle 7.5 zone. So this was extremely challenging. I honestly threw away the project for a few days because I looked at the stars and the stars were dragging because, you know, my star tracker sucks. But here we are. This is actually a pretty decent image. We have a lot of the Orion Nebula image, detail retained. Still blue at the core because that's just a first time thing. Like, that just happens. It's kind of impossible to avoid that unless you're really careful about the exposure time and what Bortle zone you're in. But for most part, we got a lot of the dust lanes here. And this is really good. So the question is, how do we go from this to, you know, something like this? Well, not that, sorry. This, which is really cool. You can see a lot of the dust lanes. It is a bit grainy, I will admit. Yes, it's because that's just the, I didn't take dark frames or bias frames, so it is a bit grainy. And you can see like the processing and stuff, and it just looks kind of like crap. But like, if you were to mount this on a wall, you wouldn't really notice. Or if, you know, you posted it to Instagram with Instagram's horrible compression filter, this wouldn't look that bad. It actually looks pretty good. You can see a lot of detail, a lot of, you know, small dust filaments, dust lanes. You can see a lot of stuff. Even some like nebula down here, which is really neat. Just some areas. Like, I mean, just look at that. You can kind of see the stuff there. So there's a few ways we can do this. So what you need to learn is adding and subtracting. And that isn't necessarily referring to the exact Photoshop terms of adding and subtracting. It's referring to the terms of continuously stretching and contrasting an image. Basically, you're trying to stuff all the data out of it as you can. As you can see, I just noticed that Starnet didn't do a great job of removing that, but that's okay because, you know, this is Photoshop. It's great. So we're going to go ahead and open a basic starred image here. I'm going to show you how I do this. So I have a lot of images pulled up in Photoshop here, but I'm just going to kind of explain what I did so you guys can understand. When you're dealing with only about an hour and 30 minutes of data in a Bortle 7 with a light pollution filter, which is just a basic SV Bony light pollution filter, it's a clip-in for Canon AD, and if you can't get a clip-in, you can also get a screw-on, but if you have an APS-C, it's pretty common just to get a clip-in. You have to use a certain lens. It's a 135, but again, enough with the explanation. Here's how I did it. So I let's see, where's the starless? I have the starless somewhere. I have the starless. Here we go. So this is the starless, right? We're going to copy this. I'm going to go to something like this because this is the correct color balance because it's kind of pinkish. I didn't do color calibration here. So we're going to drop that in and we're going to go to screen. Now you can do screen, you can do multiply. I like screen better because it keeps the details. You can see like, oh, we got a lot of dusty lanes here. It's really noisy, but we'll take care of that. And what we're going to simply do, you can either do this one of two ways. You can either use the tool here, which is levels, or you can do Control M, which if you drag this down below, you got to be careful not to clip it. And you can see I'm already clipping the Orion Nebula here, but that's pretty typical. I'm just trying to focus on how I got to, you know, this image down below. I'm trying to focus on how I got here. What you do is you just keep just like, see like this, and then like I just keep trying to drag it. And then like I'll maybe do a curves adjustment here. You want to keep dragging the contrast and upping the exposure. And then while I did this, I also copy and pasted this and then like, you know, filled in the little Orion Nebula there. But this is just generally speaking for any nebula or dark nebula image where like just some areas are just really, really hard to pull out. And then eventually it got to this image, which then, you know, went back to GraXpert where I did a noise removal, which isn't really that important. But then I put it back. Where is the image? Oh yeah, it's down here. So I put it back into that. And then, you know, I did a few vibrancy saturations. And then, you know, I eventually went into filter, camera raw filter. And I also did something that was really unique with Photoshop's tools, which this is also kind of abusing the noise. So if you do have a lot of noise in your image, this isn't going to turn out great, which it kind of turned out pretty good. It was turned out pretty decent. I could have had some bias or darks, you know, to make this better. But this was just purely an experimentation because, you know, I have to learn how to do this. So what I did is I upped the clarity and I dehazed it and then I detextured it. So what that did essentially is, I'll show you. So if like I up the clarity, dehaze, not to the point where it's overexposed. You want it still in this lower third here, and then you want to detexture it. So what detexturing does is so like if there's the texture, like you can see like it's really, really noisy, but if I lower the texture, it's going to remove some of that detail. But if you have a decent pixel size like me, you can still kind of retain like this, like you can still see like the tiny little dust lanes there, which that's just over sharpening. So you can even lower this texture and nobody's going to really notice. I'm just doing this on the starlets just to demonstrate. And then you can up the contrast and wow, look at that. You pull out a bunch of nebulosity, even the lower stuff. And then you can also go down. I did this through multiple iterations of the noise removal tool. And then I did noise reduction. And then I also did color noise reduction. So eventually you do end up with a really, really fine image that just looks kind of weird, especially with the banding. This, I know for a fact this is real, the banding here from the nebula. But these bands right here, it's kind of questionable. I think that might just be from the, like I said, the removal of the gradient. But like this, like you tell that's nebula right there, that's nebula. This might just be a little bit gradient. But the good thing is you still have a lot of the dark lanes. Ignore the scratching because that's from the tracking, but you still have a lot of the dark lanes. You have a lot of area. You have a lot of saturation here. A lot of really good things. And this isn't the way I did it, but again, you can kind of compare and contrast like I did with this. You can just lower this. You can kind of see you still got that there. I'm going to bring out the highlights a little bit. I think we need to screen this. Yes, there we go. Like I said, you just need to mess with the, you need to keep doing this over and over and over, but I just showed you the maximums. So, so that's why it's so blown out in there. But you eventually do get to an image like this. You just have to be very, very careful with your sliders. It does take about 2 to 3 hours to do this, maybe even an hour if you're like fast like me, because I've done this multiple times. I don't know where the final image is. It should just be under this. Hold on, let me open it. So this is what I finally ended up with. So we can look at the first thing. So this was the first image. You can see it's really noisy. It's lacking a lot of contrast. It has a lot of black points in it where there's just literally no data, and then a lot of shadowed points in it where there's a lot of missing data, but it's there. So what I did is I refined it using the texture tool, which got rid of a lot of that noise and a lot of that data, and then I just slightly improved contrast. So we still do have some areas that do need filling in. This would just be better if I had like 3 or 4 hours of data. But you can still see that we managed to pull out an incredible amount of detail, which is crazy. Like we can pull out this, we pulled out that. And the reason why it looks orange is because that's just an artistic choice. What I'm really not a fan of is my tracker, because it just leaves a lot of these scratches and I just don't care for that. But the good thing is we have the image. It looks really good, especially when you export it in a JPEG format or PNG. PNG is the better one because it has no compression, but this looks really good. I'm very surprised I turned out with this image, and that's how you process it. So first thing you want to do is I process mine with Siril, which is how you got that pre-image right here. This is just auto stretched. It's color calibrated using photometric color calibration, which that means it's analyzing the area size and stuff, and it just calibrates it, color calibrates it. And with a light pollution filter, like a cheap $70 SV light pollution filter, you're going to end up with a very bad blue gradient. So that's why in the final image, this thing down here is a lot less blue than it actually probably is in real life because of that. And the stars do suffer from looking a little wonky, so I had to color correct the stars. And then the last thing I want to mention before I end this, if we go to the end, which was the complete final, you'll notice that in the final, a lot of the tiny stars are minimized. And how you do that is you go to select, and then you go to color range. And then you'll do highlights, and then you'll select the stars that are the brightest using the fuzziness and range. And then you go to select, modify, expand by 2 pixels, select, modify, feather by 2 pixels, and then you go to filter other minimum, and then you do like 1.5 or 1, and then that basically reduces the amount of stars, the size of the stars that are in an image, and it looks just really clean, because now you can see some of the other data there. Yeah, it's grainy, I don't care for it, but we do have the Horsehead Nebula here with a little bit of, you can see some dark dust lanes there. I wish I would have gotten a higher, well, let's put it this way, a better tracker. Currently kind of broke for that, but I believe that my final image turned out really good. I believe that this is what a beginner novice images should look like. It might even be better than a beginner's. We've got a lot of clipping data here, folks. This can just be solved. This can just be solved if you simply capture more data. I only captured an hour and a half because my camera battery died. But again, under all the extreme circumstances, under my tracker sucking and just not wanting to polar align well, between all of my data being a little bit too less than it is, we still have managed to pull out so much data here to the point where I find it extremely phenomenal. And you can tell on the PNG, it just looks better because this is uncompressed, and you can see the data a little more clearly where it compresses and where it's not. But this looks really, really clean. I'm really surprised with this, except for the blown out Orion Nebula. That's just hard to fix. You have to capture stuff. And you can just see the amount of detail in here. You can see the dust lanes and all the really cool stuff. Even some of the lower portions of this image. Some dark nebula. There's even a small thing here. I don't know what this is, but it's really interesting. You have a lot of good data here. Obviously, it could have gone a lot better. This could be a lot better image, but I'm very happy with what I got here. And that's how I processed an hour and a half to get this in a Bortle 7. So if you want to know the exact equipment I was using, I'm going to explain it right here. I was using a Skywatcher Star Adventure base model version, not the old version, but the non-2i, so the one that isn't the second version, just the middle ground version, the one that's pretty recent but not the newest. And then I used a Canon 80D with a Rokinon Samyang 135mm lens, which was at f4, ISO 400 at 2 minutes in length per exposure. So yeah. And you can see some of this data is not even like clipped. Like this is an actual dark nebula here. This is actual data here. But some of this is obviously like, oh yeah, that's just clipped data. So, and like that too. But what's really interesting is we actually got a result I'm happy with. So that's how I did it, folks. Extreme challenge, and also on an extreme budget because the Canon 80D went from like a value of $200 to like $600 in less than like 3 years. So you can find the 80D on eBay for like $500 nowadays with like a kit lens. Also to mention, this camera is completely unmodified, folks. I see a lot of people take apart their cameras and risk getting them damaged. They even sometimes take apart their free $4,000 cameras, which, if you're cool with that, go for it. But a lot of people shouldn't be taking apart their cameras, number one, because it voids your warranty. And then number two, there's no way to replace the IR filter in it because I use my camera for other stuff, my DSLR. So this is completely unmodified. So this is extremely raw data in a Bortle 7 with a very cheap SV Bony light pollution filter. And I'm very happy with the results I got. So if you want to see more of how I process this, please subscribe. and I will get back to you later. So thank you so much for watching. Astro-P signing out, and goodbye.